Loué soit Jésus-Christ et avant avec Marie. Bonne et sainte journée à vous tous, mes chers enfants, dans les cœurs sacrés de Jésus et de Marie, et dans le cœur très pur de Saint Joseph. Et revoilà notre rubrique matinale 𝐸 and coffee. Here, the verb sent is rising. Only a few hours remain, my dear children, until the great solemnity of Christmas of the Lord, which, together with Easter with Pentecost constitutes the three great solemnities of the liturgical year. We're called to adhere to this gospel truth, which, if the gospel didn't tell us, I for one would make you doubt it, that God becomes flesh. Come on, my dear children. It's not that it's unless one wants to, so to speak, be superficial, or not to delve into the meaning of Christmas, which is something shocking, because Christmas reminds us that God becomes flesh, that He comes among us and comes to save us. It wasn't us who sought Him out. In fact, I speak for the human race. I'm the voice of humankind, not just today's 8 billion human beings, but also those very first ones. He came to find us and save us. It wasn't just a casual visit, and we didn't even welcome Him properly. Let's be honest about this. We mustn't forget it. That phrase, once and for all, is from the Gospel. There was no room for them in the inn. It's incredibly significant. I'm at home, as you can see, so you can also see a few appliances. I don't know. I don't remember what that thing is. It looks like a little monster. I put it there. It should be the coffee machine, so you won't be distracted. So the Son of God comes to earth, but there's no room for Him. It's one of the strongest gospel lines. Anyway, everything's ready now. The Christmas meals, the big dinners, the big lunches, the bechamel sauces, the creams, the tree, and the nativity scene. For this nativity scene, I'll read you a poem by Trellussa's nativity scene, which might give us something to think about. Let's see if you agree. Trellussa says needs no intro. Thank you very much, good people, for these nativity scenes you prepare for me. But why do you make them if you then hate each other? If you don't understand a thing about this love, for this love I was born and for it I died. For centuries I've spread it from the cross, but my word seems a lost voice in the desert, unheard. People set up their nativity scenes and don't hear me. He always tries to make it more ostentatious, but he has a cold, indifferent heart and doesn't understand that without love it's just worthless junk. The poem. I'll ask the director, to whom we also offer our best wishes, seeing as he's a Roman from the Castelli Romani, if I pronounced it correctly. Fine, all right. So then, let's get ready for the Lord's Holy Christmas. Let's begin with a very busy and intense schedule from today through the following days. Let's begin with today, Christmas Eve, a first-class day in the liturgy. We follow the traditional one. Today, at this time this morning, there's already been Mass, which will be at 8 o'clock every day, even tomorrow, which is Christmas. Those who can't follow it live for objective reasons, for reasons of impediment, not that I'm making it up for convenience, but honestly, it's impossible, you see, because I've received a mountain of letters these past few days, so many, I can't possibly reply to everyone. Understandably, I hope no one's upset. I'll pray for that, for the many people. I was saying, Father, I'm alone in my family. My wife and children go to Mass with Bergoglio, or my wife, or a child, often just a child. Families are so divided on this. So what to do at Christmas? You can't, let's say, pretend nothing's happening. Keep them happy and then deal with it when you can. That's how it is personally, because that's how it goes. We've got a mainstream, an establishment against us. We've got everyone against us. We're here today not by chance, as I think you'll have realized. We're not there. We're here for reasons you understand very well. Soviet methods. Soviet methods, which we will not yield to. ready to the very end. So, there's a high mass tomorrow morning. Let's go back to this afternoon at 5:30, 4:30, 17:30. As the program states, I'm sorry you haven't corrected it. It's the last day of the Christmas novena, preceded by the Holy Rosary. Following that, around 7 o'clock more or less, the Marian priestly sodality will be live. All 6 priests will offer Christmas greetings to the faithful of the small remainder. So the program includes a 7:30 p.m. rosary, the last day of the novena, and then the sodality for Christmas greetings addressed to all the faithful of the little remainder. And then at 10 p.m., as requested by many, the Christmas vigil will be celebrated. Who? Probably from Brother Celestine, perhaps someone else, we'll see, but certainly live. Tomorrow is the day of the Lord's Holy Christmas, the 25th of December. So, tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, the Solemn Holy Mass, and then at 12 o'clock, live on Radio Domina, Christmas greetings on Radio Domina Nostra. You can call from anywhere. We hope lots of children will call, because we have so many children, we see them at the gatherings, so let them call for Christmas greetings. This afternoon at 6 o'clock tomorrow, there will be the Holy Rosary, a meditation, a short meditation by me, and the Eucharistic blessing. Next Thursday, St. Stephen's Day, at 8, Holy Mass. Obviously tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, the 25th and 26th, there's no Saint and Coffee segment. It resumes on Friday, the 27th. And then in the afternoon, again at 6 o'clock, the Rosary and Eucharistic blessing. At 9 o'clock tomorrow, and the day after, there will be a catechesis given by me entitled The Birth of Jesus, the theological meaning of Jesus' birth. Friday, the 27th, marks my priestly jubilee, 25 years of saying Mass, so the morning feature, Holy and Coffee, will resume at 11:30. I'll be doing a meditation on Radio Domina, titled It's Good to Be a Priest. And then we have a lovely afternoon and evening to spend together, but for obvious reasons that need no explaining. They won't be live. I feel for these people. It's like a sword over us. I want to help them. Elderly folks feel close to us. When they heard about the anniversary, they asked how they'd manage without seeing it. I should perhaps speak out and maybe write, warning, this program is unsuitable for minors. This program is unsuitable for the Bergoglianis. I don't know how we'll manage. Sooner or later we'll find a solution. A solution. So then, we're preparing for tonight's vigil, which will be a moment of grace, a moment of celebration, of joy. And I thought today, the title of the window is quite significant, isn't it? Jesus is born, Holy Christmas. That is, we're beginning to prepare. And so even now, personally, as director of Radio Domina Nostra and guide of the little remnant, I'd like to be among you, precisely because I'm the last. Last one to wish you well. Warmest wishes, my dear children, to all of you in the little remainder. Warmest wishes for a Christmas filled with the peace of the Lord who comes. May this Christmas be one where we renew our commitment to Jesus Christ, the Son of God who comes. Let's focus our eyes and hearts on that baby so small in the center of the crib, so helpless and defenseless as every child is, for whom we pray. We must always defend the gift of life, and this is also the children's festival, the festival of all the children of the world, those who have the right to grow up in God's love. Best wishes to you, best wishes to your families, and may the peace and love of the baby Jesus reach not only your hearts, because that's the most important thing, but may the baby Jesus also bring with his blessing hand blessings to your homes, your families, and your lives. Today I thought I'd give you a reading of the birth of Jesus from Maria Valtorta. Assuming I find it, it's not always easy to find, but I think I have it here. And I'll make a few preliminary remarks while I look for it. And they are as follows. Maria Valtorta's book, not necessarily For example, Maria Valtorta's book, Maria Valtorta's work, you don't necessarily have to start with the option that it's supernatural. It's best to do it this way, and I'll explain what I mean. If there are those, because there are so many skeptics towards Maria Valtorta's work, I, to avoid any misunderstanding, am among you the first to have nourished myself over the years in the steps of the seminary, in the steps, in the dunes, in the quicksands, as von Valtorta would say of the seminary, of 8 years of seminary. I have abundantly nourished myself on mystics, specifically a great deal on Maria Valtorta. No need to make folks think it's supernatural. I believe it, I say it first, no doubt, because you can start from an objective point of view. Apart from some flowery details of trees and flowers, it's a woman. And so a man perhaps finds it a bit harder. The work is a masterpiece from a literary point of view. It's a film. From everyone I've spoken to, and I'm not here to praise Maria Valtorta, mind you, everyone who's read her work says, "Father, it's like watching a film," and I truly believe it's a gift of the Holy Spirit. So I always recommend that everyone have Maria Valtorta's works to hand, all right? Padre Pio, when questioned, said that they could be read, that in the very first years of Medjugorje, priests from Italy interested in the apparitions arrived, and an Italian priest asked Our Lady, through I believe 𝐕𝐴, if these works by Maria Valtorta were all right. And Our Lady replied, yes, read them. But if the Madonna and Padre Pio aren't enough, I'd like to say that there's also Pietro, in the sense that Pope Pius XII, without wanting to intervene specifically, wanted to keep, we know he kept the work, the Valtorta books, the rudimentary ones from the early years, on his desk. Then if that weren't enough, you should know that the hallmark of authenticity of a mission, of a charism, comes from the cross. And how much that woman suffered there, it's not easy to describe what the priests made her see, because then the devil lashes out, gets angry, knowing the good that this work would do. So having said all this, let's now read how Maria Valtorta, in a sober, truly sober way, but in my opinion unparalleled, narrates seeing the birth of Jesus. There's then a comment made by the Blessed Virgin, I think, or Jesus himself. Yes, it's Our Lady that we'll read. Time we have for Christmas, prep. Then Thursday night, Jesus' birth is more significant, theologically speaking. So, we're at chapter 29 of the first volume of the Gospel, as it was revealed to me, though it was previously called the Poem of God-Man. That's how I learned God's poem. Read. I still see, inside this poor, stony refuge, where they found shelter, sharing the fate of animals, Mary and Joseph, we know they found no room anywhere. Why? The reason, let's say, was a practical, technical one. There was a census, son, the 16th. The emperor had decreed a census of all the empire's provinces, and Joseph, who lived in Nazareth, was, however, from the house of Bethlehem, from the house of David. So David came from Bethlehem, so he had to travel these approximately 150 kilometers from Nazareth to Bethlehem. Right then, forget the idea that it's always hot in the Holy Land, because anyone who's been there knows that even outside the summer months, it gets very hot in summer because of the latitude. But in winter, it's also cold, especially in the Judean mountains. And Jerusalem and Bethlehem are located precisely. Actually, in the summer, I remember the first time I went, because this story about snow on the nativity scene had never convinced me. Going there, I understood, because even in summer, the first time I went, I think it was in '98, I was a deacon. Summer '98, it was August. Until August, before September, it was a hot day. I was in Bethlehem. I was staying in Bethlehem. I was moving around. It's about 10 kilometers from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. Now there's the wall, so it's a problem anyway. It's 10. I remember it being very hot during the day, but as soon as the sun went down, it cooled down. It was pleasant, like it is in the hills. Tuscan hills, or the high plains of Tuscany and Emilia. It's pleasant. There's not that heavy heat. During the day, yes, but then it cools down. In the evening, in summer. But in winter, there can also be snow. If you occasionally check the weather forecast in Bethlehem in January and see what temperatures they have, you'll be speechless, because they are the mountains of Judea. So they also had to cope with the hardships of winter. Giuseppe and the Madonna weren't poor, in the destitute sense of the word. That's also a myth to debunk. I don't know where it came from. That's not right. That's not right. It's not like Giuseppe was a beggar or a tramp. Saint Joseph was a worker, a serious, responsible man. Then there was David's house. Not swimming in gold, but like us, you know. Even if there are unsuspected wealthy people, many times I've discovered this, they don't show it. However, he wasn't. He came from a respectable family, so he had sufficient financial resources. He has to go to Bethlehem, and Mary's got no namesake here. How do? But they understood, because the Virgin Mary was steeped in the Word of God. And you, Bethlehem of Ephrata, picture Mary's joy. Our Lady knows she must fulfill. God's word, then, it's not skin deep. I'm sorry Zeffirelli made that concession about the labor pains. What a shame, because Zeffirelli's film is a masterpiece. It seems that, like Mel Gibson was inspired by Caterina Emmerich, Zeffirelli, who was from Florence, a Tuscan, was inspired, some say, by Maria Valtorta. Indeed, many things suggest that. Maria Valtorta's buried in Florence, likely mentioned to Zeffirelli. A shame about childbirth's pain, truly unforgivable. Who knows her purgatory time, if her soul's saved? Right, but Mary, on the other hand, is full of joy. She can hardly contain herself because everything coincides. She has to travel from Nazareth to Bethlehem. She's about to give birth, and you, Bethlehem, from you will come forth a ruler. Imagine Mary, and also Saint Joseph. Poor old Saint Joseph, though. Don't you dare mention an early Christmas, or he'll still be furious with you 2 million years later. What that poor saint saw is beyond calculation. Think of his shoes. He's there, but I'm commenting now, not reading. And it arrives there, nothing. And it arrives there, nothing. It happened to me once, in the early years, when I had my first little guides with me, that we couldn't find anything. Nothing. Because there was an evangelical Pentecostal convention. There was nothing to be found. In Sama it was tough. I felt responsible, as Joseph will certainly have felt responsible, because he still didn't know. Perhaps Mary did. I don't know. Presumo that some people will have understood that they had to go to the cave, to the stable. Poor Saint Joseph. Mary kept him back. The fire dozes with its keeper tonight. Maria gently lifts her head from her bed and looks. She sees that Giuseppe has his head bowed on his chest, as if he were thinking. And he thinks that tiredness overcomes his good intention to stay awake. Giuseppe's half asleep, but he must sleep, because that's a wholly divine matter between Mary and God. She's born, the birth, so Saint Joseph is put to sleep like Adam, and the Eternal Father is like that. And when he wants something, what do? Why there? For me, it's our poor men fighting against God, and the Eternal Father is patient, but it's done as he says. So Saint Joseph is a bit sleepy. Then the Madonna smiles a good smile, because probably this is also the last sign for her that the moment has arrived, because nobody must see it. And making less noise, imagine how that divine fawn moved, which was the Holy Virgin. She might be 13 or 14 years old. No more. Less noise than a butterfly can make. Here's Valtorta, who settles on a rose, sits down, and from sitting goes down on her knees. Like a butterfly here in Valtorta, she settled on a rose, sat down, and from sitting went down on her knees. She prays with a blissful smile on her face, lost in ecstasy. How could we ever experience that prayer of that moment? If you agree, let's close the curtain. How can we know what the Mother of God felt and said at that moment, while she felt the baby pressing to be born? She prays with a blissful smile on her face. So naturally, here, there's no need to add it. We need to abandon once and for all these modernist versions, right? To Don Vitaliano, to Saviano, to Enzo Bianchi of a screaming Madonna. Enzo Bianchi was able to say that Joseph held her from behind. Things truly blasphemous. The birth was virginal, and look, it's a dogma of faith. It's not an option, as that unfortunate brother says. Whether she's a virgin or not, what difference does it make? No, it's a dogma of faith. We'll say it again tonight, kneeling down. Ex Maria Virgini Natum, ex Maria Virgine. It's a dogma of faith. They say, but how is it possible? Because they throw it onto the aromic biological plane that a woman gives birth and the baby passes through, granted. That, however, their virginity is certainly lost, they say, and they don't understand that nothing is impossible for God. Even St. Jerome said that the Son of God passed through Mary's womb, like the Jews passed through the Red Sea. God parted the waters, they passed through, and then he closed them. Only God can do that. If God could part the Red Sea, asks Jerome, why not Mary's womb? He opened it, but here we say it with folded hands, and then he closed it. This St. Jerome, because St. Gregory the Great, who comes after, will add more and say how Jesus passed through the closed doors in the cenacle. From the resurrected, the doors remained closed, he entered and exited. So it happened when he came into the world, he passed through Mary's womb, leaving it closed. The same as he passed through the closed doors from the resurrected. It's the same as he passed through Mary's closed womb. This St. Gregory adds, and Joseph, like St. Thomas, the apostle, because like St. Thomas he wasn't there and had to testify that Jesus was truly resurrected, St. Joseph testified to Mary's virgin birth. Next, so Our Lady, according to Valtorta, prays with open arms, not exactly in the form of a cross, but almost, probably like this, as when we pray the Lord's Prayer, we, the sacred ministers, but with our fingers like this. Perhaps Our Lady held her hands like this. Who knows? But, says Valtorta, she had her arms positioned like this, in a prayer-like manner as when praying the Our Father. With palms raised and forward, and never seeming tired of that painful pose. Because however you do get tired, so it means it's a prolonged prayer. So in these hours we must immerse ourselves in Mary's prayer that accompanies the birth. The Church's prayer, Mary's own. The Father saw this. Mary prays, and in her prayer prepares for the birth. Then she prostrates herself, her face against the hay. That is, she throws herself to the ground. This clearly must have been inspired by God. She throws herself onto the hay, something a woman in labor evidently does easily. In an even more intense prayer, a long prayer, Joseph stirs, sees, in Bethlehem. I don't know who among you here has been there. Anyone? Here in Bethlehem, near the Nativity Grotto, with the adjacent wall, there's the so-called Grotto of St. Joseph, where I've celebrated Mass many times, because according to tradition, that would have been the small room where St. Joseph was. Joseph stirs, sees the fire almost dead and the stable almost dark. The fire's dying. Chuck in a handful of really fine heather, and the flame will flare up. The fire's relit for warmth. You're using bigger and bigger twigs, because the cold must be biting, the cold of a clear winter night that penetrates every part of that ruin. It's inside the rocky crevice, obviously. It's clear that however much you light the fire, it's no 𝐷eLonghi or 𝐴riston. Poor Giuseppe, huddled by the door, let's call him. Or she says that the opening, against which he holds his cloak, must have been freezing, that is, facing the outside of the cave, because evidently a kind of warm atmosphere was created by the fire heating the environment. The stone, meanwhile, lost moisture, at least it dried out a bit, and then it became warm, and therefore released, because fire tends to rise, the heat, not the fire, although the fire also tends to rise. So these rocks absorbed heat, and that was that. In fact, the fire, it's interesting to read the details of these accounts. The shepherds who lived in the caves lit the fire early, not at the last minute. In fact, it seems that many times they didn't extinguish it at all. Although, when they went to sleep, they did something, they put it outside. Why? For two reasons: the fear of a fire, and because deaths often occurred from suffocation, you see, and to keep wild animals away. Wolves, you understand, wild boar. Fire scares wolves. It's an ancestral thing because humans have always defended themselves against wolves with fire. Primitive man defended himself against wolves with fire, so this fear of fire is ingrained in the wolf. In fact, if you ever meet a wolf, do this. I always walk with a torch on. If you meet a wolf, scare it with fire. Wolves run away when they see fire. So they put the fire outside, but first they lit it early. The days are like that even in Bethlehem, just like here in Sicily. Up north it's a bit different, but it's just like that, the temperature and the climate. So cold isn't cold, thanks Friulian, but it's cold all the same. So they lit the fire early, probably around 4 in the afternoon. Or they ate at 11. Lunch was more or less around 11, midday at the latest, and they left it burning. So Saint Joseph is now stirring the fire. He brings his hands close to the flames, takes off his sandals, and puts his feet near, poor chap, to warm them. I find it enchanting to talk about the Madonna throwing herself onto the hay, about Saint Joseph warming his feet on Christmas night. Because we've always had a problem, all of us, and it's this: reconciling the human and the divine. For example, we expect that if we think someone is a saint, we want the stereotype. It has to be a certain way. If it's themselves, I've known holy people. Born Father Amorte, to name just two, they were themselves. They didn't have to act holy. Holiness isn't acted. Watch out, we can unknowingly show others we're healthy. Others might fall for it. Others may fall for it, not God. You must be yourself. Got it? It's Saint Joseph, you see. As the divine child grows, he takes off his sandals and puts them by the fire. And Mary, her face turned towards the straw, it sends shivers down my spine. It makes me understand that what we live every day is holiness. We don't have to search for God knows where, but in the everyday. What do you think? So then he warms his feet, and what happens next? Let's see. When the fire is burning brightly and its light is steady, he turns, sees nothing, not even the whiteness of Mary's veil, which before made a clear line on the fierce darkness. He stands and slowly approaches the bed. So Valtorta, who didn't know the topography of the Holy Land, confirms what's in the Holy Land. That is, in the Constantinian-era Basilica in Bethlehem, there's the Grotto of the Nativity, which is, you should go there. Especially at this time of year, I've never been able to get there, for obvious reasons. I was a parish priest, so I couldn't go to Bethlehem in the Holy Land at Christmas. But there's this cave. You've been, haven't you? You go in, you go down, and then you enter a mystical atmosphere. Even the most distracted person would feel it. Choose down below. There are several caves, and then they'll show you, not the Catholics, because there are a couple of Franciscans who are allowed to stay there. The gratitude of all Christians and the Franciscans of the Holy Land must be eternal. Thanks to them, we have access to the Holy Sepulchre in Bethlehem, because otherwise we couldn't enter. The Franciscans managed to convince the Orthodox patriarchs who control the most important centers in the Holy Land. If nothing else, there's Bethlehem, where he was born, and the Holy Sepulchre, where he died and rose again. If they have that, they've got it all. Then there's the Copts and Orthodox watching and the Catholic priest, but they accept once they see. I've been 5 times to Holy Land. Sorry for these asides, but they help. They make you think. I remember that when we arrived, we were a group of Sicilians, all Sicilians. We never speak softly. When we have to whisper, we speak like this to whisper. Here imagine 30, 40, even more, hundreds of worshippers going down there, total merrymaking. But it wasn't wild merrymaking. It was the kind of devout merrymaking typical of us Sicilians, because we were going as soon as the Orthodox realized. They wanted to intervene immediately, and I witnessed a sight I'll never forget. A couple of Franciscan friars, it moved me that time. I was young, but I remember it. 2 Franciscan friars, realizing we might be forbidden entry, went straight to the Orthodox monks, the Orthodox guardians, spoke to them, kept quiet, and we got through. The friar told me once more. I was there not wanting to rise. Come on, hurry up. It really hurts here. And there's this star, and only there is written, the Word became flesh. Here, this is where he was born. It is born. Born here. You can read it there. Here. St. Joseph seeks Madonna now. He can't see her. Sleep, Mary, he asks. Thrice. Maria's awake. Until she wakes up and answers, Prego, do you need anything? No, Giuseppe. Try to get some sleep, to rest at least. I'll try, she replied, but praying doesn't tire me. How to? Right. Then, if one prays at night, then one can't wait to return, especially in winter, to the warmth of the blankets and pillows. Goodbye, Maria. Goodbye means good night. Goodbye, Giuseppe. Maria resumes her pose, face to the ground again. She's worshiping because, well, the director suggested this lovely photographic sequence. This is the star that indicates the exact spot where Jesus was born. Not where he was born, as the priest told me. I said we succeeded. She prays with her hands clasped to her face, like this, lifting them occasionally to feed the fire, then returning to her fervent prayer, alone. Less noise from, incidentally, the fact that Joseph and Mary slept separately is further confirmation, firstly, of the reverence of the most chaste Saint Joseph towards the Blessed Virgin, and then of the virginal marriage they lived. A sliver of moonlight creeps in through a crack in the ceiling, like a blade of incorporeal silver searching for Maria. God's coming, the moment's here. Light, the first element, light. This light, arriving like a blade of incorporeal silver, seeking Maria, stretches out and finally reaches her, covering her. What does it remind me of? It's evocative of biblical texts, which I haven't got time for now, but I did talk about them during the novena of the Immaculate Conception. Sinai, the waters of primordial chaos, and then the burning bush. Mary is now enveloped in light. Maria lifts her head, as if summoned by heaven, and kneels again. Oh, how beautiful it is here, says Valtorta, and raises his head. What did Valtorta spot? And she seems to shine in the moon's white light, and an inhuman smile transfigures her. See what? That scent? How's she? Only she could say how much she lived, felt, and experienced in the radiant hour of her motherhood. These are the moments when she is about to give birth to the Son of God. Valtorta writes, I only see that the light around her grows, grows, grows. It's the theophanic biblical theme of light. Light is a theophanic element. Light is a manifestation of God. And so, to express what's happening, Valtorta is struck above all by the light. Her dark blue robe now seems a gentle forget-me-not blue, and her hands and face appear tinged with the same blue, like someone bathed in the light of a huge, pale sapphire. This color, though fainter, reminds me of what I saw in my visions of the Holy Paradise, and also of what I saw in the vision of the Magi's arrival. It spreads ever more over things, the garments, purifies them, and makes them shine. Well, now you're a bit disappointed, because Valtorta, probably by God's will, focuses on the side details. God willed it. While we wait for the birth, she changes the subject completely. For example, he writes, the vault full of cobwebs that hang precariously by a miracle of statics, black, smoky, repellent. It looks like the vault of a royal hall. Each paving stone is a block of silver, each crack a flash of opal, each spiderweb a priceless canopy woven with silver and diamonds. A large lizard, dormant between two basins, looks like an emerald necklace forgotten there by a queen. Actually, we have to admit that here, Valtorta deserved the Nobel Prize, regardless of whether it's supernatural or not. Here we're dealing with an undeniable literary level. To say that a slow worm, hibernating between two rocks, looks truly beautiful, an emerald necklace forgotten there by a queen and worthy of a Nobel Prize. A cluster of hibernating bats looks like a precious onyx lamp, because they all become luminous. The hay hanging from the highest manger is no longer grass. It's threads and threads of pure silver that tremble in the air with the grace of unbound hair. So you're expecting me to tell you now, tell us, this is a decisive message. Now the cake, you've had God's grace. You didn't ask for it yourself. That God is finally showing you, for once, something that's never happened before, how this birth is happening. So tell us about it. What's this lizard got to tell us? Who cares about the lizard? As a theologian here, many theologians got mad about it. So you're being sly. No, it's God who allows it, because the veil must remain closed. So while that blessed woman over there is giving birth, she's being bothered by lizards and bats. But who's so idiotic? Do you agree? Agree with me? It's not the lizard distracting you with bats. The Son of God is being born. Of course, you're interested in seeing how it happens, what's going on. Instead, no, it's God's will. Because even if Valtorta is introduced to the mystery, she can't see the mystery. Can't see it. Okay? In fact, Valtorta adds that everything turns white, 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 white. The light grows ever brighter. It's unbearable to the eye. In it, the Virgin disappears, as if absorbed by a veil of incandescence. She disappears, and her mother emerges. She didn't tell us anything, right? He said everything, not nothing. He said that this remains the mystery born, that we will sing this night, born of the Virgin Mary. The human mind, human reason, this matter concerns us very closely lately. Anyone who claims to interpret God's actions using only the power of reason falls. God fells him. It needs charisma. And the charis is the lens that allows you to contemplate the mystery, not understand it. And here, Valtorta at a certain point is forced to say that the Madonna is increasingly enveloped by the light, ever more luminous, ever more disappearing in this light. The Virgin disappears in this light, and the Mother emerges. Applause for Valtorta here. Let's see if it wasn't a real vision, but it's as if she were showing it to us. And this stroke of genius, saying that the Virgin Mary enters the light a virgin, and she emerges a mother for me, truly. That's why Pius XII, because Padre Pio knew it through divine revelation, and Our Lady of Medjugorje, they probably spoke of the poem of the God-man. But what was the name of the Pope I just mentioned? It wasn't divine revelation. He was a theologian, he was the Pope. In short, he was prepared. When he reads it, since he won't have read it all, but maybe the key part is what he's looking for. The birth story, from a theological perspective, as I'm doing with you, has grasped these details. The green lizard and the bats. It's already a way of saying that you can't enter the mystery. So let's see how he expresses it. That the Madonna enters, or rather it's not that she enters. The light enters her. It's around her. The Virgin is enveloped by the light. She emerges from the light as a mother. She saved goats. Let's see how it continues. Yes, when the light returns to being sustainable, in my view. So she is blinded, like all of us, but not because the light is lacking, because there's too much of it. Because there's too much of it, you see. If there isn't enough light, we can't see for two reasons. Either there's no light, or there's too much of it. Christ. So, Valtorta is blinded by this divine light that blazes forth. But this in both theological and spiritual terms, from our lived experience. From experience, less I get this mission. And I hope that's the case for you too. There are those who have left because they want, as they say, everything under control. With God, this story we're living through, of the little that remains, that the Pope isn't here, and the great prelate must come or not, or yes, who really is, the right channel. This story here, if one doesn't have the aptitude for a faith understood as surrender, I've talked about this many times, it won't hold up, it'll fall apart. Because, rationally speaking, the other perspective, that I manage what I can because I don't want to get into Christmas, is undoubtedly more qualified and winning from a human point of view. I understand the canonical right, the petitions, the appeals. Sooner or later they'll respond with some project or other. It's all rather obvious, this position of ours. That's why we're going through this. They're right. We're fanatics, extremists, visionaries. I'm a guru, the guru of the nice ones. You understand? Because I think we're the ones here, even in a problematic position, that of those who must trust a blinding light. I mean, we don't see, not because the light is lacking, but because there's too much of it, and we see askew. Then we start seeing clearly again and say, I see Mary with the newborn child in her arms, and we don't faint, you didn't faint. So I say, this person sees the Madonna with the child in her arms and doesn't die of love. You need a special light, a divine light. I've told this story before. I enjoyed that Sunday evening's defense of Medjugorje. Many people thanked me for it, because many people got the idea that I'm against Medjugorje. I'm not against Medjugorje. I too am indebted to Medjugorje. But Medjugorje isn't Medjugorje anymore. It's not the real Medjugorje. There's a false Medjugorje, a false church, a false pope. And there's a real Medjugorje that's hidden. You'll see it's like a little flame, you know, that thing that rekindles itself like Saint Joseph. And I remember once Miriana, she was the one who saw Our Lady on the 2nd of the month. I participated a couple of times in the apparitions there at the Blue Cross at the foot of the podboard. And when she goes to see Our Lady, she's very collected, very collected, very collected. Then afterwards, when the apparition ended, I was right there beside her, and then I told you about it on Sunday evening, Christmas Day. I was at 𝐥'𝐸's apparition. There were 4 or 5 of us with family members, in addition to Jakov's family, who only see her once a year. Well, I saw it in the reader's eyes, a little less in Maria. But no, because I'm not questioning, mind you. I'm recording what I've seen with my own eyes, much less in Maria, moltissimo in visca, insuperabile. Maria and Ivan, who are the ones who see her every day along with Visca, appeared to me, so to speak, inexplicably used to this apparition. They're in ecstasy, but if I compare the comparison with the face and expressions of Mirjana Diviska and Yakov, then there's also, I remind you, Ivanka, but Ivanka also sees her once a year, but I've never been the apparition. The only one who hasn't yet participated is Ivanka. And you notice that they see the hand. You know, when the appearance ends, if it's grace like it happened to me, goodness of God, to be beside them, I see pain in their face. I saw this particularly in Mirjana, who's a mother, happily married, a practical woman, a graduate. I think she's the only graduate among the readers. And so, she's been asked many times, why this expression of suffering? And she says it's because every time Our Lady comes and then goes away, and I come out of the ecstasy and find myself still here, I grieve so much. Our Lady is so beautiful, and paradise is beautiful, and eternal life is beautiful. So this is paradise, the Madonna with the lily in her arms. What time is it? Let's wrap up. A little child. Let's see this child. The computer's singing today. Narration's lovely. A little child. How's the boy? Look, rosy and chubby, who gurgles and kicks with little hands as big as a rosebud and little feet that would fit in the hollow of a rose heart, who whimpers in a trembling little voice, life, life. Wouldn't we have fainted at the sight of that? Oh yes, we did. She didn't. We did. We got through the night, just like a newborn lamb, opening its mouth, which looks like a wild strawberry, and showing its trembling tongue against its rosy palate. Why is its head moving? No, stop. So blonde as to seem almost hairless, a round little head that her mother supports in the curve of her hand, while she looks at her baby and adores him, weeping and laughing together, and bends to kiss him, not on his innocent head, but on the center of his chest, where beneath is the little heart that beats for us, where one day there will be a wound. I'll preemptively address that. I think this is a borrowing from Valtorta. Perhaps the Blessed Virgin already foresaw it. That's more likely, all things considered. So, her mom's immaculate kiss will heal that wound in advance. The ox, we've talked about the donkey and the ox, woken by the light, rises with a great clatter of hooves and bellows. The donkey turns and brays. The first to worship Jesus. What do you want? Why does she shout? And I adore the baby Jesus because I'm a donkey too. The first two after the Madonna to worship Jesus. So there's room for everyone, all right? Oh, I speak for myself. You can judge if you're different. The first to worship Jesus after the Virgin Mary were the ox and the donkey. That one mooed and the other donkey brayed. Ah, what a marvel, worshiping Jesus with a bray. Look, I have to tell you something. God is unbeatable. He's captivating, simply amazing. The Lord Almighty, He never ceases to amaze me. He could have found goodness knows what kind of bathwater if it had been us. Well, come on. We would have made our son, our only son, be born. You understand? With a flash of golden chariot wheels, you see, on a chariot of fiery angels, etc., etc. The cave, the hay, Giuseppe warming his feet, and the first two who adore Jesus, who are incredible Christian faith. But if we don't recover at Christmas this identity that speaks of smallness, of humility, of simplicity, because God is humble, and this is quite curious as a theological fact, God is the humble par excellence. Even though he is omnipotent, he doesn't overpower with omnipotence. He lets things happen, and when he reveals himself with the Son, with Christianity, we have this. So because then anyway, on Mount Sinai, he kind of made it clear that he was God. There he kind of made it clear that he was God. But here, well, all right, says Valtorta, it's the light that recovers the little fellow. His words are lovely, but I like to think they wanted to greet their Creator for themselves and for all animals. Oh, and St. Joseph, admit it, you forgot. You'd forgotten, admit it. Giuseppe, praying intensely, stirs. He obviously hears the animals making noises, so he's worried. Something's happening where the Madonna is, right? A thief could break in. Take your hands from your face, lift your head, turn around. Standing tall, he hides Mary, and she calls him Joseph. He comes running. Joseph is the worst of all in this story, and when he sees her running to see what's happening, and when the Madonna turns and he sees God made flesh for the first time, he stops. Drops to his knees there. But Mary goes to meet him with the child and says, "Come, Joseph." And holding him close to her heart with her right hand, she stands and walks towards Giuseppe, who's walking awkwardly. I don't think he was awkward. He was trembling. Between wanting to leave immediately and the fear of being disrespectful. At the foot of the litter of the manger, the two newlyweds meet and look at each other with a blissful tear. "Come along," says Mary, "we offer you to Father Jesus." And as Joseph kneels, she stands upright between two tree trunks supporting the vault, raises her child in her arms and says, "Here I am." For him, O God, I say this word, "Here I am to do your will." When the Redeemer is born, Madonna's first prayer states it's vital. We're in the Our Father. We'll see if we follow. Thy will be done. Here I am to do your will. Here he is, me, Mary and Joseph. I'm the husband. Here are your servants, Lord. May your will be done in all times and events, for your glory and love. Right, let's draw the curtain. So with the last words we read in the story, and the mother, with her sweet, swaying step, brings it to you and lays it down. Oh, I've seen now for so many years that even men try to do the swaying step to put children to sleep. A man's question put to women, does a dad's rocking ever work as well as a mum's? That's food for thought, I reckon. It's getting closer, but I saw it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. Why isn't it the same thing? God willed it. Because of breast milk. This morning I was reading the story of an abortionist who has eliminated about 170,000 fast and daughters. He had daughters on whom he performed abortions, and an American doctor. He said that one day he had to perform an abortion, but the ultrasound technique had been developed, so he wanted, as he always did, to carry out this abortion procedure while watching the baby, the fetus, at 5 months. And he realized that as he began to suffocate it, the fetus moved its little hands and opened its mouth at the umbilical cord as if to scream. He was completely shocked, changed his life, regretted what he'd done, and became one of the most important activists in the American pro-life movement. Here, I believe the message is this: the defense of life from its natural beginning to its natural end. Our lives are in God's hands, not the doctor's. Even the best doctors, if they don't pray, and if you don't pray for them, won't help you. They might give you the wrong treatment. Doctors aren't almighty, they think. They feel it, because most of them are atheists, positivists. They are trained in universities where, since they take the scalpel to open the human body, they act like the first cardiosurgeon who performed the first heart transplant. Because Barnard jokingly saying in South Africa, "I opened my heart but found no soul." Or like Gagarin in space saying, "I didn't see God," because that's positivism. But we're uniquely positioned to defend life against abortion, and women who've had abortions must always offer masses of reparation for the unborn children. It's not a trivial matter, as it might seem. And to its natural conclusion. It's clear that we, I've concluded this too, must never sponsor anything. Understand the therapeutic event. For example, when John Paul II was there with all the machinery, he himself understood it was too late to keep him alive. Keep them alive when not needed. No. But at the same time, not euthanasia either. These stories, I don't know if you know them, tragic, dark, about Italian people who go to Switzerland to die because the tumor is in the final stage, because the doctors, with a coldness that sometimes hints at something else, tell the patient that now they will be increasingly suffocated forever. But look, I followed so many people of faith who were ill. One of ours was Tony. Tony had lung cancer. Who here knew him? He was a man of faith, a praying man beside me. The doctors had predicted an illness that could cause unimaginable suffering, because at some point you die suffocated. Instead, Tony died peacefully just before he died. He was joking with his family, he spoke with us. I heard him because I was outside on the phone. Why? Because prayer accompanied him, his family, and all of us. Death is never dreadful. And it is only if there's no God. If there is God, we must accept it. And you know how we always accept it? Pray for us now and at the hour of our death. So from birth to death, life is in God's hands. Here I am, my dears, I've finished. I hope I haven't bored you, but anyway, it's bad weather here, a bit chilly. Now, a couple of phone calls. Remember, this afternoon at 5:30, the last day of the novena with the Holy Rosary. And then at 7 o'clock, there's the... Here it is. This is the place for the Christmas Eve Vigil at 7 o'clock. Here it is. The Sodality sends its Christmas greetings. You can connect. To hear our greeting, there are already a few calls. I think I'm ready. Ready? Who are you? Assuntina, Assuntina, Assuntina. Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. Right. Best wishes all. Thanks. Thank you. Assuntina, thank you. Thank you. Merry Christmas, Assuntina, to you, your family, all your loved ones, and everyone else. Greetings from Veneto, from the north, from Veneto, from all of Italy. Let's gather around the Bethlehem grotto on our knees tonight. Let's adore the Son of God who becomes flesh, who is born among us.